So welcome everybody to today's webinar. We're really excited to have this. This is a holistic approach to job seeking. One of the more difficult things we have to do in life, honestly, is we'll get a job and then maybe get a different job. And there's nothing more emotionally wrought, self-doubt inducing than getting a job. And so we're here to talk about job seeking holistically. And this is a wonderful collaboration between Career Services and well, the Department of Communication, but honestly, all the schools. So arts and humanities, global studies, business, STEM, and oh my gosh, health sciences. Jackie?
English.
Oh, English, yes. And so welcome everybody. Hopefully we're going to have what I would describe as a positive, informative, yet realistic discussion. Just going to hear my dogs barking about job seeking. And Chelsea, go ahead and do the next slide. So the agenda here is we have our introductions, we have common questions, issues. Career Services is going to have go over some absolutely wonderful resources that they have for all of our students. And then we're going to have some discussions and then final thoughts and Q&A. Okay, next slide. And so we're really excited. So my name is Dr. Bjorn Mercer. I'm a department and world languages. I will be acting as your MC here. We also have Rachel. Already lost it. Say your last name again.
Dhaliwal. It's Rachel Dhaliwal.
Dhaliwal. Yes, what a great name. Dhaliwal. Rachel Dhaliwal, who is a senior career coach in Career Services. We have Dr. Brittant Jacobs, an associate professor and department chair in health sciences. We have Dr. Jim Burch, a department chair in global studies. Dr. Larry Parker, who I hope will be here soon, a department chair in School of Business, Dr. Novadean Warson-Williams, a department chair in STEM, and Dr. Jaclyn Fowler, recently published with her brand new book, department chair of English. And so we're here to have a discussion and most importantly, hopefully help. Next slide. So one of the things we wanted to go through first is recently I surveyed most of the schools in APUS. So there are 5 major schools. And so at those schools, I sent 5 main questions, and it kind of distilled those 3 questions down to 3. And so these questions were asked of faculty. And honestly, we got about 100 responses. So 100 faculty responded. And honestly, they spent about 6 minutes each thinking about this, which anytime anybody takes a survey, typically it's like, how can I get through this as fast as I can? About 10 seconds. But the fact that each faculty took about 6 minutes is absolutely wonderful. And to me, that really shows their focus and desire to help students job seeking. And so the 3 important questions were, what are some common barriers new grads encounter when trying to get a job in your field and industry? So each faculty was asked, which field are they in? So like example, communication. Communication is not going to be very applicable towards STEM. And so each one had very specific things per field. And so what are some common barriers new grads encounter when trying to get a new job in your field or industry? The next question was, how do you recommend students get experience in your field before getting a job in the field? And then the other one was, what are some common questions you get from students about getting a job in your field or industry? So, and honestly, the responses we got were great. And these are here to help not only faculty field questions for our students, but also for Career Services, for them to help as they interact with our students. And next question, or next slide. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to have a roundtable. I'm just going to go and look at those 3 questions for each person who represents the school. Now, each person has their specific field, and so they can answer it. Example for Jackie, specifically English and Lit, but she also reviewed some of the questions, and so kind of giving a broad overview. Now, when we get to the Q&A, if you have a question that's very specific about your field and we don't have your answer, we will try to get that answer for you. So Jackie, you are on top. And so when you look at those 3 questions and you think of arts, humanities, and education, and in yours specifically, what are some things that come to mind?
So I think one of the most important things that a degree in arts, humanity, and education can give a student is the ability to communicate. And what we know from business is that 60% of promotions and 60% of non-promotions are related directly to the ability to communicate. And it's not just the communication that we produce, the ability to speak and the ability to write well, including things like, for instance, emails, but also the ability to receive text and to process it and interpret it correctly. And so some of you may have wondered, oh, why did I have to take Shakespeare? Why did I have to take a literature course? Well, one of the reasons why is because it helps you with the receptive part. It helps you understand and interpret well. So going out into the business world from an arts, humanity, and education background allows you to have a wide berth in business and in the professional world, because you are a strong communicator if you've come through the school.
Excellent. And just from your own experience, can you think of any questions that students have asked you about job seeking?
Yeah, in the English department, if I narrow it to English, right? So if I narrow it to English, a lot of students will say to me, well, what are my options in English? Do I have to teach? Well, you don't have to teach. It's a wonderful career if you do. But you are one of the most sought after degrees by businesses because of the ability to communicate, to read and write and speak professionally. And so that's probably the biggest question I get in the job search category for English. The other one is, what can I do with an English major? And again, if you think about not particularly teaching literature or teaching people how to write or teaching linguistics, it's about communication. And if you think about what you do in any career, it's all about being able to communicate your ideas well in spoken and written forms, and to be able to interpret what's given back to you as well.
Excellent. Absolutely wonderfully said. So thank you, Dr. Fowler. And so next we'll go on to the Dr. Wallace E. Boston School of Business with Dr. Larry Parker. Dr. Parker, thanks for being here.
Bjorn, I appreciate it. Thank you. Can you hear me just fine?
Yeah, we can, definitely. Did you catch the three questions that were asked commonly to the faculty?
Yes, I did. And actually, if I could, because it's every time I refer back to him, my picture goes off screen. And so if you, there you go. All right. Really, and I'll speak specifically just from the area that I'm a department chair for, because we have so much and within the School of Business. Transportation and logistics, supply chain, reverse logistics as a whole, or supply chain as a whole, and I'll say that because it encompasses the whole family. Is really it's an old industry. Back as you and I have had conversations on history and different campaigns of different types, but for this discussion, it's one of those fields that has gained a lot of notoriety and attention as of late, as we went through COVID, and individuals spoke on supply chain that maybe never spoke on it before. And so really, when we talk about barriers, one barrier that individuals would encounter is an environment where a lot of people feel like they know your job, so those outside of, so it's a industry that touches pretty much every other facet of business, but it's something that in historical terms really wasn't affecting the bottom line as much. So it was taken for granted. So you could go for distances and things of that nature. And so what a lot of students find is that when they bring their credentials in, they may be challenged to still push the door open, because individuals feel like they may be able to, they can do without someone. So they can, I would say, sometimes gaps within this area can, or in the past, would be withstood a little bit longer. But what I will say now is, it's because our industry actually covers so much, from management down to the warehouse individual, this industry of supply chain is, very broad. It's not like one individual will go in and seek one particular type of job. So it's really the second thing I would say, and I'll give you three, is narrowing down their focus on where they want to go. So, are you more of a planner? Then that's something that you find yourself probably in a different place of the hierarchy. Or if you're a practitioner and you really want to affect a particular part of the supply chain, you may find yourself wanting to get more hands-on. And I'll move on to like what I recommend to students. Really seek to give them practitioner or real-world experience, because as I say, the value of the supply chain subject matter expert, I believe, has gone up. And you touch so much of the company's bottom line these days. So someone's entrusting a lot of value to you. And so if you can say you have experience, internships or something where you've actually risked some things and shown that you've actually have practical experience, that's what's going to get you a leg up. And then the last thing, some common questions that I get from students about getting a job in the industry, and it's unfortunately individuals focus on the big ones that you hear a lot about. The common companies that you hear that are leaders in innovation are the Amazons, the Walmarts, those type things. But that does not take away from some of the upstarts and some of the older tried and true, industries there. So what I would say is, hey, what the question is, what's my recommendation? What I would say is, don't run out for the majors. You can do well by seeking those smaller firms that have a niche. So with that, I'll land that plane, if you will. I'm actually at an airport right now, outside of my truck. So I'm still at this level, still being a practitioner. So hope that answers your questions.
It does. Thank you so much, Dr. Parker, and for being part of this. This is great. One of the things I think that you said which is so important, is don't always go for like the big jobs. Finding the job that works for you is always, it's complicated. And in our mind, we have ideas of the job we want, the job we think we deserve. And then, part of this is to be positive, informative, and realistic, but then there's the job that we get. And it doesn't mean that we might not get our dream job the next time or the next time. And that's, I think, one of the very complicated aspects of job seeking is, what job we think we should get is different than what the job we get, but it doesn't mean that you can't keep on working towards it. So thank you so much, Dr. Parker. Next, we're on to the School of Health Sciences with Dr. Brittant Jacobs. Thanks for being here, Brittany.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. So I think from our perspective, most of the degrees within the School of Health Sciences are very applied. So what we find is that when folks are applying, some of these entry-level jobs still say you need 3 to 5 years of experience. And how frustrating is that when you come out of your degree program, you're looking at an entry-level job and it says you need 3 to 5 years of experience. So what we recommend here in order to mitigate some of these barriers is really to take advantage of those volunteer opportunities or to get involved in internships. Most degree programs offer internships for credit, so you can do that and earn credit throughout your degree programs. And then these volunteer opportunities, they don't have to be big and flashy, but these are the things where you can actually take what you're learning in the classroom and apply it. And then you have something that you can show to your future employers, the people that you are interviewing with. You're able to speak to how you can apply this in the real world settings. As a sport manager, that's my background. I was one of those people that was hiring a lot, and we definitely did want folks with experience. We wanted you to be able to apply what you were learning in the classroom to that career field. And we wanted to make sure that on day one, you had a base level of knowledge so that we didn't have to start from square one. So I would highly recommend volunteer as much as you can in the industry that you're interested in, and take advantage of those internship opportunities.
And that's absolutely wonderful. I can also just compare that to my wife, who's an occupational therapist, where they have internships in the degree program. But also one way to become eventually an occupational therapist, which you need an MAOT, a master's in occupational therapy, is to become an OTA, occupational therapy assistant. There's many different jobs in healthcare where you can become a assistant, which is usually like a two-year degree. You get paid great. You do that job for several years in the field, and then you can go on to get your further job or your further credentialing if you want. So there's always stepping stones, wonderful stepping stones on the way. And there's some great questions that are coming in the chat. We're going to address some of those when we get to the Q&A. So just so you know, we see them, but we will definitely talk about it then. So thank you, Dr. Jacobs. And next, we're on to the School of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math with Dr. Novadean Warson-Williams. Welcome, Dr. Warson-Williams.
Well, thank you. My delight. Excited about being here because guess what? I was in your space or in your role at one time, and I know it's a challenge, really. But I'll just share my own personal experience. One of them is I pursued an internship, and that internship allowed me to get into the industry, which thereafter allowed me to build my skill set, my toolbox, and from there I was able to get into other aspects of the industry. So what would be opportunities for you, especially in the world of STEM? You certainly, many of, from what I've gained by looking at our stats of students, many of you fortunately already work in some facet of the industry that you're interested in. So you are getting that experience, and that's great. But even if you're able to, as noted earlier, volunteer and to work with your organization, your student organizations where you can meet, because networking will be one of the greatest way. In fact, most of the positions that I've ever received, I received those positions because of people who knew me. You may have heard this wise saying, your gift will make room for you, or your reputation precedes you. And so, as was noted earlier, in those spaces where you're able to work, even as a volunteer, and make an impression, you walk away, obviously, with a letter of reference without a date. That way you can always use it. But once you begin to have that impact, the people who you impact in terms of what you do with what you know, and illustrate to them that you're very much interested in building your skill set and improving, they oftentimes, those individuals that you're working with that become your mentor, more or less, or your role model, oftentimes will provide opportunities for you. So as they step into other positions, they may be calling you to come and work for them, or they may be recommending you. But most of the positions that I've ever achieved because of recommendations. And so you leave, in essence, a good impression. You start with a good impression, you leave a very good one for those individuals then, as they, especially if they're individuals in, let's say, environmental science or space or cyber or any facet of STEM, for them to remember your commitment, your hardworking attitude, all of those oftentimes called EQ skills, your willingness, your leadership, you're willing to learn. Those kinds of skills and demonstrating them, even though you may not be, let's say, the star in essence, where the star in maybe that particular field, because you're just starting, you're not necessarily, you're at the journeyman level, you're at the entry level, more or less. But even in that, if you show excellence in your ability to work hard and your ability to learn and your ability to be taught and to be a follower and establish your leadership skill, you'll be surprised how much those kinds of behavior will set the stage for you later, and the people you work with will remember you. And as job opportunities become available, they oftentimes will say, yes, I remember working with Robert Smith or Sarah Brown, and they would, that would be an excellent position. But outside of that, understand that there are a number of different, working for the government, by the way, is one way to build your skill set without an incredible amount of cost for any company. And after that, you can segue back into the civilian sector. I don't know if it'll be shared here, but there are opportunities such as Palace Acquired Internship, which is an internship program for just about any discipline. It doesn't even matter, but you can get in, and that's for the Air Force. But there are others for the Army, such as I believe the Cooper program, and then there's all these different armed forces have various internships that you can work in. And the beauty of that is you get top secret clearances in some of these because that's a very value added set of credentials. To get top secret clearance, you are golden. And I tell you, you can write your ticket, but if you get it via, let's say, working for the government for a short time, building your set, getting those certifications, especially security plus A plus. I have to tell you, in IT, there is no opportunity for you to work until you get that security plus certification. So some basic type certifications, that would be the case too, in some of the other STEM fields. Certification sets you apart from your competitors. So you have to say to yourself, how do I distinguish myself from your competitors? And oftentimes it's that extra effort, such as certifications. Of course, you're doing well in your class and performing well, and keeping your credit. Remember to guard your credit. This is your personal credit, because your credit score in and of itself can either make or break your opportunity. Who would think credit score? But it does sometimes. And also the type of interactions that you do. Pay attention to social media. Don't just, your reputation, you're building breadcrumbs for everything you do. Many of you have LinkedIn pages, and so that's a great place to start. But recognize that as you build a breadcrumb of yourself, that's an opportunity. And I tell you something else. If you're able to publish for the faculty, do that. If you're able to begin to work on even small pieces, an article in, let's say, environmental science or in space studies, or any opportunity to set yourself apart. Let me tell you, it's very attractive whenever you sit at an interview table and you say, sir, ma'am, I have a degree, but let me tell you, I was able to work with my faculty and I published an article, or I was able to work with my organization and I published. So you've stepped beyond the scope of just learning now. You're actually applying those skills into your field. So it's that extra edge, that extra step. And then those are kind of common barriers that I've discovered with some of our students. And the piece about getting the experience, you're doing that in one, you're building a reputation, you're building your breadcrumbs, you're building your resume, and you're going beyond the status quo. You're setting yourself definitely apart from others, working closely with your faculty, because I tell you, they would be excited to publish a piece with you, even if you were to present an organization. Sometimes we have these learn and talk with our organization, with the various organizations. There's so many of them, like 40 of them. And you say, you know what, I would like to present a piece on listening skills. I'd like to present a piece on whatever your passion is. That counts. That's a way of stepping out of the standard classroom learning capacity, and you're taking your skill set further. That speaks volume when someone is looking at your resume. When someone is looking at your vita. And by the way, I would recommend that you have a virtual resume of some sort of visa that someone can click a link and go to, because no employer wants to search hard for the information they need. They want to be able to get at it. And when you make it easy for your potential employer to see your skill set, it gets to it. I mean, these folks are very busy. So you want to get to it, and you want to set up that relationship. So more than anything else, build relationship, because it's not so much who you know, but it is who knows you. And I'll stop there.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Warson-Williams. And I think to highlight one thing that you said, all the wonderful things you said, is networking. It's hard to really emphasize how important networking is, unfortunately, in many ways, during the job seeking process. But if you authentically network, if you authentically be yourself, don't be too pushy, that will pay off in the long run. And so there's probably a bunch of Q&A questions we're going to talk about. And so that's definitely one of the things that I would recommend is, if you're not naturally outgoing, it's okay. Be yourself. Kind of go beyond yourself a little, make yourself a little uncomfortable, and talk about what you know. And that's the important thing. Talk about what you know, and try to network both up, parallel, and down, because you never know who anywhere you are might be the hiring manager, the boss. So don't always assume it's just I have to network with the VPs, all those. No, you never know. You never know. And so absolutely wonderful. And the next one from the School of Global Studies is Dr. Jim Burch. Thank you, Jim.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and start off with a story. Was working with a student in one of my Intel classes, and we had an assignment, and we developed a relationship, and we went back and forth, and the student really owned their project, and this was kind of a capstone thing. And then to the points that my colleagues have been making, I'm not going to belabor them all, but what was interesting was that the student was transitioning out of the military, and he was, that's one of the hardest things to do, is to transition out of the military and into civilian life, especially if you're an Intel person like myself. And he was out in a sporting event, and he's sitting next to somebody, and they start talking, and it's clear that this conversation comes up, and they start talking some pretty heavy duty things about the current environment and world events and stuff. And come to find out that the person that he's talking to is the hiring manager for the National Geospatial Agency, one of the big 3-letter agencies. And he got a job like really quick. But so to kind of start off where Dr. Fowler started off with us earlier is, there's critical skills, but communication is really key, right? So Jackie, if I have students asking me in the Intel side why I need to take English, I'm pretty blunt with them on why they need to take English. Intel studies is very multidisciplinary. We're all over the place. We're not one thing. But starting off with communication, collaboration, and emotional intelligence, you've heard my colleagues touch upon these. One of the key things, though, in terms of our competencies in our field, is really critical thinking, the ability to write, to brief succinctly, and to take complex issues and really break them down to convey what we know, what we don't know, what we think. So that measure of authenticity that has to come through, you have to be able to engage. And these are all things that not only the U.S. intelligence community or the military, but also the private sector are looking at. Lastly, I would say that to the point that Dr. Warson-Williams made is whether you agree with it or not, the world seems to be enamored with certifications. So play to your strengths. In my case, it was knowledge of foreign languages that got me in. If you have a language, if you've published, if you're more technically minded in cyber or STEM, the Intel community and the private sector is looking for folks that have these critical skills, whether it's data analytics, data science. And you can see the linkage between Intel and a lot of the other schools that constitute part of APUS. Some of the common barriers that you've heard, I'm not going to enumerate them all. Security clearances are an issue if you want to get into the Intel community. Your social media footprint is going to follow you around. That's just the reality. I am not a paranoid person, but people wonder why I don't have a social media presence. That's because, I just don't want to put anything out there. But some of the barriers, it's hard as a civilian to get into the Intel community, although that's changing. Traditionally, somebody like myself who served in the military, was easier for us to get into the Intel community. That's not always guaranteed anymore. You'll see that the Intel community is chartering and sponsoring a lot of hiring fairs throughout the country. My own parent agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, is created a special pay band, for example, to entice and able to recruit people in the STEM field or all the things that we need to do within the Intel community that are associated with STEM. So we're trying to not only recruit and retain, but we're trying to stay competitive in the Intel community by bringing in those people that have these skills, communication, emotional intelligence, etc. Some of the common questions that I get is, well, how do I get in, or what is it that I need to do? You've heard them already. Network, whether it's going to a hiring fair. I know that our school sponsors a lot of university school activities and clubs. I get a lot of interaction with students. And some of the clubs that are they don't necessarily have to be associated with Intel, but it's amazing who you come across and the various clubs and activities that are part of our school. And then lastly, really, it's about your attitude and your mindset. You have to have a growth mindset in this business. The idea that, and I've never been one to kind of rest on my laurels. I'm always looking for the next step, the next thing, and that's what makes life interesting anyway. So whether it's a publishing opportunity, whether it's an opportunity to get a certification, whether it's the ability to take a significant project in one of your classes and parlay that into to be able to showcase that and take it over to an internship and say, hey, I'm able to, these are things that I can do. I'm capable of managing these complex projects and problems. You're making yourself more marketable. And I think to what one of my colleagues said is be authentic. Just, there's no need to be pretentious or anything else. Just be your genuine self, and you will see that people react to that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Burch. And gosh, there's so much to say on what you said. And, especially in global studies, there's just so much specific. But I like what you said about, the world still values certification, and degrees. We are, of course, at APUS. We love that you're here getting a degree. But the degrees don't solve everything. The degree, which gives you certification, plus everything you do yourself, everything you work on yourself, everything, the positive, approach you bring to things, that is what makes you marketable as a person. And so let's go on to the next slide. And so Career Services has some great information, and then after this, we'll be doing some Q&A. And so thank you, everybody, for your portion right now in Career Services with Rachel and Chelsea. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Mercer. Thank you also, faculty. All of those resources and ideas and suggestions and observations and stories that you guys shared are so critical and so very, very helpful to our students and alumni. So thank you all for being here. We really, really appreciate your presence. So my name is Rachel Dhaliwal. I am one of your senior career coaches here at American Public University System, and I coach primarily for the School of Security and Global Studies oriented students with a couple of extras added on or taken off throughout there. We do coach according to industry here, so that is something to keep in mind when you do reach out to us, though your professors are themselves the industry experts. So please, please, please be in contact with your professors. As they said, as they suggested, working on a paper with them, working on an article or a project or something like that. These are the industry professionals. We are career coaches. There's a lot of things we can help you with and set you on the right path, but these are your industry professionals. Please reach out to them. So I wanted to go over a little bit about what we do here at Career Services, and I want to let you all know that these resources, anything that we do, offer, host, provide, etc., at Career Services is available to our students and our alumni. So if you have ever completed a program here and you are an alum, you are eligible for career services support for life. So please do keep us in mind, whether that's today or 5 years from now, okay? So some of the things we help you with here are career exploration for those of you who just want to kind of see what's out there. Maybe you're not exactly certain what industry, or maybe you do know your industry, but you need to look into different roles and different aspects of it. As some of the faculty have already brought up, you know, even within an industry, there are so many things that you can do that it's important to kind of just get an idea of what's out there and see what really blows your hair back. So we can help you out with that, with the career exploration. The career coaching is what you might imagine. So helping with the resources, helping with the guidance, strategizing job search. We help you practice with interviewing. You don't necessarily even have to have an interview coming up. We're happy to practice interviewing with you anyway. LinkedIn profile reviews, very, very important. I'm going to go a little bit into LinkedIn a little bit further on another slide, but it is very important to have a LinkedIn profile. Okay, if you are out there job searching. Resume reviews. So we can help you with both private sector and federal resumes. And I say that because many people are still unaware that the federal sector has its own resume format and resume expectations. So if you've been applying all over the place on usajobs.gov and you're never getting an answer and you're not using a federal resume, that is most likely the reason why. So we can definitely help you out with that. We do also help with curriculum vitae as well. We just don't see those as often. So resume reviews, private sector and federal. Career Link mentioned here is our job board, our university job board. We have an employer relations team who are constantly hard at work, reaching out to more and more employers every day and bringing employers in and showing them what our students and alumni are capable of. And they participate in our job board Career Link. They also oftentimes will participate in our virtual career fairs. We do host those throughout the year. Sometimes they will have a theme. For instance, we have Employing Those Who Serve, which is generally geared towards somebody who has an affiliation with the military, whether that is active duty, transitioning, veteran, spouse, family member, etc. But we do invite all students and alumni, no matter what your focus is in, to attend all virtual career fairs. As was already brought up by our faculty members here in this discussion already, networking. Networking is so important, and virtual career fairs are a great way to network because you are going to be able to talk to recruiters and hiring professionals from the industries and maybe even the employers that you want to target. So at the very least, it is an excellent opportunity for you to grow that network and learn more about your industry. We also host a lot of group events throughout the year. So this might be employer information sessions. We had many of those this past year with some top employers coming in, being interviewed by one of our employer relations specialists and talking about their industry, talking about their employer, what they're looking for. Some really great information sessions there. We also do career coaching, group coaching over common topics and things of that nature. So there's a lot of things we do throughout the year. We are going to at some point here put a link to our Splash That page in the chat. That is our events page where we constantly update that. If you go to that today, you're only going to see 2 events, one of those being today. But that's because we're now at the end of the year. So please stay tuned. We are going to add more as we move on into 2024. Can I have the next slide, please? So resumes, as I said before, private sector and federal resumes are 2 very, very different things. So I wanted to introduce just some of the basic understanding of each of these and how they differ so that you understand why using one in the wrong arena may really be affecting your ability to get some positive results, okay? So the private sector is anything that is non-federal, okay? So non-federal employment such as private companies, nonprofits, state and local governments. This is important. Sometimes I'll see a federal resume being submitted when somebody wants to work for Arizona State, for instance, okay? So federal is only for federal. That's at the US level, not state, okay? And importantly, too, to understand is government contracting firms. Many people want to get on with a government contractor. There can be some really good money with that. They are contractors. They are a private sector employer. So you would still use a private sector resume, even though you might be trying to get onto a contract that works with the government. Okay. With private sector resumes, there's a stronger focus on brevity and summarization. Okay, so short, punchy bullet points, maybe a skills section that's very heavy on your hard skills, such as your software, your languages, your technical proficiencies, and things like that. And you want to keep it to 1 to 2 pages maximum. Okay. Some people may have been told, thank you, Chelsea. She's posted our events page in the chat, so definitely go and check that out. Keep a copy of that somewhere. As I said, we do update it. So 1 to 2 pages max. Oftentimes you will see where people get locked into that mentality that they only have to have a 1-page resume and they can't go over that. If the job description, or I'm sorry, the job announcement does not say must be 1 page, you can probably use 2 pages just fine, so long as you need that space, okay? You don't want to be listing things that are not relevant to the job, because that's just extra and that's not what your reader is looking for. As was kind of implied earlier in conversation with faculty, hiring managers, they're quick, they're moving, they want to get the information, they need to be able to scan it very quickly, get an idea, do I want to look at this more later and put it into that pile, or is this going in the round file right away? Okay, so quick, brevity, summarization. Whereas on the other side, federal applications can be technically, they can be as long as you want them to be, federal resumes, okay? However, you are going to start hearing, if you haven't already, I've seen a lot of it with the job opportunity announcements that I've looked at over the years with USA Jobs. They're really starting to encourage people to keep those resumes to 5 pages or less. You are going to see it in job opportunity announcements where they may even say, we will only look at the first 5 pages. That is because when they open those up and when people apply and they collect those resumes, some person has to read every line on every page of every resume that is submitted in order to make it fair. So hopefully that will address that ATS concern that sometimes people will have about the federal government, that the ATS system goes through and it totally cuts people off almost immediately. That's not true. That is a myth, okay? Real humans really do read your federal resume. So please keep it to, we like to recommend 3 to 5 pages at the most, okay? Again, you want to focus on your relevant skills and experiences and qualifications, training, certifications, etc. Just relevant things. You may find that that means that you have to take out a section of your work history. Guess what? In the federal government, they don't care about gaps in your resume. They want to see, are you at least minimally qualified, and hopefully a lot more than that, but at least minimally qualified. Okay, so don't worry so much about gaps in your federal resume work history. There is a stronger focus on specific details. So unlike in the private sector where they want it short, punchy, quick, and brief, in the federal sector, they want to know how much experience do you have doing the thing they want you to be able to do. So if they need you to know how to work on a car, you need to talk about all of the jobs where you ever worked on a car. And you're not going to just say worked on a car. You're going to go into specific details about it. This job, you worked on only Audis. And in this next job, you got promoted and you also took over VWs. And then in the third job, you got promoted again. And now you are over the entire auto maintenance shop in 15 other auto maintenance workers. Okay, so it's a lot more detailed. They want to know about your accomplishments and your achievements, and it must contain specific information such as hours worked per week. This is critical because they are going to count up how many hours you worked per week on average in every job you ever had, which is why they need the start and end month and year, and compare you to your next closest competitors. So it does matter. Okay, so private sector resumes and federal resumes are very, very different, and it's important that you understand the difference. On the career services pages in your eCampus, we do have guides for both of those. Those are great resources to help get you started, but you are also welcome to submit resumes to us for review and work specifically with an industry coach on tailoring and all of the things. Okay, so that's kind of my brief overview of resumes. Chelsea, can I have the next one? Okay, so I touched on applicant tracking software a little bit with the federal government, but I'm just going to talk about it kind of generally speaking. Some tips for getting past the ATS, right? You've heard of that, the idea being that when a hiring manager is putting out their job description, they're telling the system that these are the things that I want to see in qualified candidates. So anybody who doesn't ding enough of these don't even show me that resume. That's kind of the idea behind an applicant tracking software, okay? It does differ according to employer. It also differs in what each hiring manager or maybe department within an employer does with it, okay? So it's not always as bad as some of the news stories or your buddy's experience makes it out to be, okay? It's just software. It's just something to help them weed down what they have to look at. But because of that, that is why tailoring is so critical. That's why it's so important that you make sure that the content of your resume is the sort of thing that the machine wants to see initially. And then once a human gets to see it, does it also speak to what they want and what they are looking for? Okay. Some important things to keep in mind is which file type does the employer want? Okay. If you submit a Microsoft Word document, but they only wanted PDF, might your application get rejected? Maybe. It depends on how sensitive the ATS is. Even if the ATS lets it through, if the hiring manager sees that you didn't follow directions, that's not a good way to start. Okay. So pay attention to the file type if they specify it. Okay. Disable all hyperlinks. It is very, very common for people to put their email address in there and then leave the link, or to put in their LinkedIn profile address and then leave the link. Some software is so sensitive that it's going to reject anything that comes from outside the organization that has an active link in it. So go back through there, highlight that, right click, and select disabled hyperlink. Okay, if the whole address is on there, they can copy and paste it into a URL bar themselves, and they'll be able to find you. Okay, so disable your hyperlinks. Don't get fancy, okay? I know that writing a resume can be very intimidating and you don't know where to start. So a lot of people rely heavily on templates, and templates are good up until they're not. They can really lock you into a format that might not work for you. The other thing is if that template is not sensitive or is not safe for an ATS system to read, you could be missing whole sections that you yourself can see on your resume, but the applicant tracking software can't see it. So you get rejected before a human even sees it. So we recommend that you don't really use templates if you can at all avoid it. You can even copy the appearance of a template, but make it your own, okay? If you are going to use a template, make sure that it does indicate that it is applicant tracking software friendly, okay? Use very basic fonts. You don't want something really fancy. You don't want a lot of italics in there. I personally prefer that people don't use italics, but that really kind of depends on the reader, okay? If you are going to use bold font to emphasize things, use it very, very sparingly. It does get taxing to read it a lot. And keep in mind, your resume is not the only one they're reading. So use that very sparingly. And no colors or stylistic flourishes. I remember years ago seeing a federal resume that was written in pink font and had some scrolly things up at the top that were just pretty. And I recommended that not be happening, okay? So keep in mind your industry, okay? Maybe in marketing, maybe in your more creative design work roles, they might want to see something a little bit more fancy. But unless you're really getting into one of those creative types of roles, I'm going to say just go very standard, black and white, that's it. And don't use a lot of creative flourishes, okay? Make it very easy to read, very easy for the ATS system to parse as well, okay? I mentioned tailoring. I'll just touch on that briefly. So directly address the requested qualifications, okay? It is very common that people will fill their resume with, this is everything I've done, and here's the duties and responsibilities I had, here you go. And if you are not tailoring to the specific job description that you're applying to, what you're asking your reader to do is make the mental leap and go, aha, he worked on X machinery, and I have this thing over here that is related, but it's also 10 years more in the future. Can he use it? Can he not? Okay. You're asking your reader to make a mental leap and picture you in that role. And you can do that, but if you want a lot more success, you need to speak directly to what they're asking for. Show them. You make that mental leap for them. Show them how in your last job, yes, you wrote these reports, which they write differently. They don't have the same kind of reports, but you wrote weekly reports on this topic that went to A, B, and C stakeholder, and it influenced in such a way as to result in this. Okay. Those sorts of things, that tailoring like that and demonstrating your accomplishments and achievements, that makes the argument for why you and not the person who also works at the same place you do, who also applied for the role. If you're focusing on just those general duties and responsibilities, your document is not really dynamic. Your sales pitch, if you will, is not really persuasive. Okay. So definitely tailor where you can. Right. Sometimes that can also mean using the words and the language in the job announcement. Well, not sometimes, I'm going to say always. What I mean by sometimes is sometimes you'll see where it will ask you for management experience. So you'll see management in there, you'll see manage this, manage that, project management, things like that. If you are saying supervise, oversaw, resolved, things like that, you're not saying manage. So again, the ATS system, which is only as good as the information that was plugged into it, is not necessarily going to make that leap either. And you could be rejected for something so simple as just word choice. Okay, so review the job descriptions, look at the words they are using. If you see collaborate in there at least 5 times, don't have it in your resume once, have it in there a lot. Okay. So review that. And then, as I said, omit the unrelated information. Okay. We don't necessarily care that you're really excellent at baking a cake here at the bank, but if what I do need you to be able to do is operate at a high ops tempo, keeping track of lots of different projects happening at the same time and still serving customers, and you have that experience having worked in a bakery doing those very things, now it's relevant. Now you can tell me about that, and not just simply that you're a baker. Okay, so make things relevant to the job description that you're applying to. Chelsea, can I have the next one? So social media, as I said before, LinkedIn is very, very important for those of you in the job search, okay? Build out your profile. Oftentimes what I find myself telling students when I'm looking at resumes and trying to help them especially cut down a longer resume to get it to 2 pages or something like that is keep in mind that your resume is a marketing document. So it should be filled with your best, most relevant qualifications. You might have more than that. You probably have more than that. Guess what? Put it on your LinkedIn profile. If your LinkedIn profile has everything you ever did, had all the awards and medals and achievements, and your volunteering and all of those things already listed there, if your resume has done its job and made your hiring manager interested enough to know more about you, they're going to go look. So make sure it's on your LinkedIn profile, okay? Include a headshot. There are actual statistics out there, and I can't think of any right off the top of my head to quote, but I promise you they exist, that recruiters and hiring managers are looking for headshots. They just are. When they roll up on a profile and there's no picture there, they can't really engage with the human element, okay? So have a headshot. It doesn't have to be professional. It doesn't have to be expensive, okay? You can stand in front of a white or beige wall, very simple background, head and shoulders. Look approachable. Don't look stern and mean. You don't necessarily need to do that. Okay, look approachable. On the other token, you don't need to look like Jim Carrey and have a big, huge smile. Just be you. Be authentic, as the faculty has already said. And include all of those qualifications, like I said. With your personal social media, Dr. Burch touched on this, okay? Your social media footprint, it's going to get looked at. I am sure that each one of these faculty members can tell you a personal story that they either, as the hiring manager or the friend of, has heard a story about how a hiring manager was going to hire this girl, went back and looked at her social media history, and that's that. Okay, please be aware of what you do on social media. Please be aware of what you are tagged in on social media. Okay, lock your accounts down. Set your privacy settings to where you have to approve things. Okay, think about what pictures you're putting out there. Your profile picture does not need to be you chugging a 40. Okay, be professional, be aware of what you're doing and how you appear online. That also goes with connections and groups. On a lot of software, people can see, or on a lot of platforms, people can see the groups and the connections that you're a part of as well. So do keep that in mind as well, okay? If you don't want people to know that you're really interested in a particular topic that you might want to keep private, or that maybe a large swath of the population has a very strong opinion about, be aware of that because it could potentially be seen. Okay. And then obviously conduct. You don't want to get on social media and be blasting people left and right. And, people are looking. They really are reviewing your social media. Okay. So just be smart about it. Chelsea? Yeah, so that's my part on career services, but I believe, Bjorn, we're going to get back to questions and answers.
Yeah, for discussions, do you mind if we just go to Q&A?
Yeah.
I was looking at the different questions. I don't think.
Mhm.
So final thoughts, and then we'll get to. Can you go back to final thoughts? Final thoughts. Definitely, the job seeking process is difficult. There's no easy way to say that, but always try to be positive, and then always try to focus on getting the right job that fits you. I mean, there's so many wonderful things that everybody said. Besides being authentic, presenting everything, every time you apply for a job, make sure that resume you have crafted yourself and not just like spitting out 30 resumes. Honestly, you'll probably get one hit if you just do that. So just be very intentional. So don't take it personally. The final thought, the degree alone doesn't always open doors. That's one of the difficult things. That's why so many of our experts have said networking, and ask for help. Humans are not a lone island in the ocean. We need each other. That goes along with networking, that goes along with our family and our support. So as you are applying for a job, ask for help. It's all okay. Let's go to the Q&A section. And I know that there's been some absolutely wonderful discussions going on in the chat, and I'll just share one experience I have. One of the things I always recommend for all of my students and my faculty is always apply for jobs. Even if you have a great job, always apply for a job, because it's always important to know what's out there. It's always important to have your resume up to date. And honestly, because of the way business is these days, you never know when a company might start downsizing. Nothing that you can avoid. It's just risk mitigation for yourself. And I know I applied for one job a little while ago, and I applied on Friday. And on paper, man, I was qualified. And on Monday, I got the no. And so don't take it personally. When you get that no, and you're like, what did I do wrong? Definitely reflect. Go back and look at the resume. Like, okay, what did I put here? What did I put there? Is there any glaring things that were wrong? As Rachel was talking about the, is it called ATS, application
Yes.
tracking systems?
Yeah.
That's just a reality we all have to deal with. And what Rachel said about the hyperlinks, I didn't know that. So I just got hit with some new knowledge. I'm going to start using that. I did not know. And so, but I'll say a very cheesy oh my gosh, quote from that soccer show that just happened. Oh my God. Ted Lasso. My God. Thank you, Brady. Be a butterfly. Is it be a butterfly? Oh my gosh. I'm totally butchering it, but have a memory, but a very short memory. Learn and move on. Learn and move on. And it's just one of those things that it just takes time. Now, are there any questions in the chat that anybody wants to address? Anybody want to share a story? Any student want to ask a very specific question? Remember, we don't have experts everywhere, so if we don't have the answer for you today, we'll try to get it for you in the future.
I see one in the chat from Brooks, and it says, how far ahead of graduation should I start applying for jobs?
Okay, I'll jump in unless, and faculty, please talk over or through me or with me. Brooks, often, what I like to recommend for people is in the private sector, qualified and you're not missing something critical, like if you're trying to be a truck driver but you don't have a CDL license, okay, critical. But if you have at least 60% of the qualifications, go ahead and apply. Let them be the person to tell you whether or not they think you're qualified enough. Keep in mind that job descriptions that you see, those are the nice to haves. That's if you were 100% ready to hit the ground running on the very first day and they didn't have to train you at all. That's what you're seeing in job descriptions, okay? They know that people are going to have more training. They're going to have specific employer training. Well, this is how we like to do it here. So absolutely, start applying now. On your resume for your graduation, rather than putting the dates a date span for your education, you want to put expected August 2024 or whatever it is, okay? Or just, the month and year that you actually achieved it, okay? So I like for people to list at least expected and month and year because it conveys an idea to the reader about how far away from completing that degree you have. And some employers will go ahead and give you a chance anyway, knowing that you're working on that resume. Dr. Burch, I saw your hand was up and wanted to take this too, so I concede the floor.
Hey, no, thank you, Rachel. Brooks, great question. And I mean, I hate to say it depends, but opportunity is going to come at you when you least expect it. So just a story. And this is probably not the smartest thing I've ever done, but when I was halfway through my doctorate program, there was an email that came around and said, hey, any students that have a Homeland Security background, if you want to teach, we're accepting part-time adjunct positions. I'm like, well, I got family, I got a regular job. There's this thing called a dissertation, all these things and I'm like, well, I could probably handle this. So, and I went and applied, got in, and that's what led me here. 14 years later, right? So I don't think it matters to me, and my colleagues can disagree, but if you see an opportunity and you think you can handle it, jump on it. And to Rachel's point, if you're trying to be a truck driver and you don't have the license, well, maybe now's not the time, but that's why I go back to it depends.
Dr. Burch, it's so funny that you say that. I had said that as we were getting ready for today's webinar. I tell my students when I'm coaching, if I had $1 for every time I say it depends, I could retire by now, because it really does. It depends on you. It depends on your background. It depends on where you are applying. It depends maybe even on the day that the hiring manager is having when they're reading it. It's just and that kind of goes back to the don't take it personally, and you're not always going to be able to account for every roadblock. So focus on the things that you can control. Absolutely.
I guess the only thing I would add to that too, Rachel, is that you have to be ready to jump on that opportunity, and you have to be persistent. And nothing that any of us have been saying is, yeah, you have to keep a positive attitude. You have to have a good support network and everything else. And now all that's true, but I'd throw persistence and just preparedness on that as well.
Absolutely. And, if I could add to that as well, and it kind of goes to I've heard many of you already kind of bring it up in your own way as we were doing these discussions, is I like to say that your career isn't always a straight line. It's not always that story we all grew up with where you graduate high school and you go to college or military or something like that, and then you pick the thing you're going to do, and then you're that thing for 30 years, and then you retire and do whatever you want, right? Your career is a mosaic. Okay, you might get into the NSA not as an Intel analyst. Maybe you're going to go be an HR specialist, but you want to eventually get over into Intel. Get in as an HR specialist because your background's in HR, right? Learn, network within that, get the kinds of qualifications they want to see in the Intel analyst, and then bring it over. Then apply there, okay? So keep in mind that your career is a mosaic. Every job conveys transferable skills and abilities and network opportunities and all of those things that you can take with you. So really be open-minded and consider maybe a job adjacent job, to your dream job.
Can I also throw in, I think sometimes, we need to make sure that emotionally we don't get distracted or jealous, maybe, because sometimes we hear, oh, I got this degree, I did some work, and then I became a vice president. There's a lot missing in that story. A lot missing in that story. And so sometimes people have those stories, and maybe that was actually their path, but we all have different paths. And if you are able to talk to, say, people like leadership people who have these, I'll say, high value jobs, And if you were in a position to ask them, like, what did you actually do to do X, Y, and Z? Take that opportunity and ask them. Otherwise, I think sometimes when we talk, when we see videos or we talk to people, those people will distill their path very simplistically. So we're like, what happened? What happened in that 5 years of just working that you then just got this big job? And also know that the big job is not always the job you want. We're all different. It depends. But your dream job might actually be your nightmare job. And so really, really focus on what fits for you. Jackie.
Yeah, just a little bit of strategy for you guys. When I'm looking for a job, I think what would be my perfect job, and that becomes the center, the bullseye of whatever I'm looking for. And then I think about like concentric circles. What's closely related to that job, but not exactly that job? And then I fill that second concentric circle with other possibilities. And let's go to the third ring. What would be close to that second ring, but not exactly on, but still getting pretty close to the bullseye? And you see what I'm doing is I'm building, instead of being so pigeonholed into one particular job, I'm creating the opportunity to get close to that job in maybe a different industry or a different level, or a different way of looking at the job I really want. And sometimes you'll be shocked to know that that difference actually is the thing that you really want. And also that difference can lead to the bullseye. So don't be afraid to think creatively, to widen the lens of what you're looking for.
Excellent. Dr. Watson.
Yes, and I'd like to add too, sometimes it's not about the money. Sometimes it's about quality of life. So the job you choose may afford you more quality, more time with your loved ones, more time for vacations and sitting with your children to help them with their homework. It may be that you're all about the money. So I say that only because I have a daughter who is a cybersecurity specialist. And I was more about, you're going to turn 50 one day. Work for the government, because at least you're guaranteed retirement. You can invest in your 401k, yes, and many people just aren't diligent when it comes to that, but you're guaranteed a retirement. It's not an outstanding one, but it's more than what many people usually contribute to their 401k in some instances, but you're guaranteed a retirement. So when you turn 50, you can be assured you're going to get X amount of dollars for the rest of your life and not have to wait until Social Security to get a check. But in her mind, she says, no, I hear you, Mom, but I want the $122,000 that I can get as a 26-year-old. And for her, that was far more important than preparing herself for the prospect of not having to worry about retirement. So that's another factor, is keep in mind, when you work for the government, oftentimes the position is there is a better quality of life in that respect. It's not squeezing every bit of productivity out of you. When you work for corporate America, it's all about more. Fortunately, you do get to be creative. You are paid more. So if that's what you're attracted to and that's your preference, you go after that. But there's recognize that the benefits might also be a driving factor as far as which position do I take. Benefits, they make sense. Yeah, I tell you, I see federal workers who are just relaxed. I mean, they're on a coffee break for a good 50, 20 minutes. And you're like, huh? Yeah, but jobs come in their own different way. But at the same time, they're not commanding an outstanding check. But then in many cases, it's very difficult when you work for the government to be let go. It takes an arduous process for someone to release you. Whereas when you work for corporate America, and I tell my daughter this all the time, I said, yeah, you may be working for this company. And she's already only been in the workforce for about 4 years, and she's already changed companies a couple of times because she's wanting that added increase. But I said, you may be working here today, but there may be factors that may cause you to have to change position later, such as you're laid off, because companies are all about the numbers. So pay attention to that as you make the decision as to where you go. Quality of life, income. Quality of life, income.
Excellent.
And
Thank you.
I mean, sometimes you can find a company that'll offer you both, but remember, retirement will come. And also, if you have a whole bunch of loans, student loans, I'm finding that some people unfortunately cannot enjoy a good quality of life because the student loans burden them. So there may be some opportunities where you're able to work for Job Corps, or you're able to work for the government, and they'll shave off X amount of your student loans. If that's a factor for you. I know many of our students are using tuition assistance, so that's not a bigger issue. But if you're a civilian and you're that student loan, I'm discovering that many people who are in their 50s now, they've deferred those loans and they can't shake them. They're now having to pay out $1,000 a month for some loans that they got years ago. So pay attention to that too, because that's going to impact where do I go. I had one young lady, she was in space. She was able to get an awesome degree, cost her $200,000, but she can't even own a home. Okay, because of where she elected to go. She went to an Ivy League school. That cost a whole lot of money. But the whole point of you want to pay attention to that too. Which of these opportunities will allow you to get rid of your student loans just for a short time as you build your skill set and reposition yourself.
Absolutely wonderful. One thing that you said, she went to an Ivy League school. Go to the school that works for you, and don't worry about what other people think about where you went to school or where you live, because people will have biases, and you can't worry about other people's biases. The important thing is what you bring to the potential job. Larry.
Bjorn, I appreciate that. And actually, I'm going to combine a couple of statements that were here. So I'm not giving credit to everybody. Just if you said it, know that I'm giving credit to you here. One thing I heard was apply often. Okay. Another I heard, keep your materials or your credentials ready, because you never know when you apply. And then also it was a statement about it can depend on the day that the hiring manager is having, or the hiring authority, or that person. And what I want to say is that's absolutely correct, and that's a number of situations like those is how I found this job here, and also other employment, over my time in academia. I was actually even at one point doing cold calls to some leaders in universities, and I could tell that dean was just having a day. And when you present yourself as a problem solver, and that goes back to that statement of depends on the day that person was having, and you present them with the credentials in order to make that problem go away, that's why you want to have your materials ready and accessible. And I will speak to that one statement about how early. For those of you that are in the military, I was actually in my transition course. So for many of us, we know that's either 2 years or a year out from when you're getting out, because you're going through your classes on what you need to know about retirement. But I will say, in that small section where they taught us how to find jobs, I came across APUS. And literally on the lunch break, I ran out to make sure my resume is ready, and I sent that off. And so you never know. And what I would say is, if you're the person they're looking for, you can negotiate and discuss, have a conversation with them, because in some cases, they know how hard it is to find quality people like yourself, and they may be willing, more than what you may know, to work with you for your transition. So those are my thoughts there.
Absolutely excellent. Thank you, Larry. One thing I'd also recommend, and I don't know if this was mentioned, is always read articles about AI and ChatGPT and certain jobs that might become automated or might be offshored. To just know that whatever you're in, always be wary and always looking future about what you're doing, and can it be potentially replaced? Again, that's part of the being positive, informed, but realistic, is think about that. Do I need to reskill? Do I need to focus on something else? And if you start working, say now, it's not as hard versus if you're surprised by it. One example that I remember in the past was somebody got laid off essentially next to me, and their resume was on their work computer, and they got laid off and they were walked out the door along with like 100 other people. They didn't have their resume. So once they got home, they had to recreate and spend hours working on their finely crafted resume because they were in that unfortunate position of corporate America of just, well, we need to save X amount of money. Here's 100 people, and they're gone. So even with your materials, always have it on your stuff, in your personal stuff, like your drive or something. So it's easily accessible and it's always up to date. So I think this is going great. Rachel, how much more time do we have?
I think 12 minutes, right? We're at 12 minutes, Chelsea, left. And I've been trying to answer some of the questions in the chat. 12. Okay, thank you. So some of those questions are in there. Brooks, under the forms menu in your eCampus, you can look up a not called pending graduation letter, but that's what it is. Okay, so it will be obvious when you see it. You can send away for that, and that will kind of let everybody know that, you know, how close you are to completing.
As far
Anybody
as
have any other?
the panel, anybody have any suggestions? I know one thing for me, Rachel, and you can amend whatever I say.
Sure.
When it comes to resumes, you know, I've sifted through hundreds of resumes. And for me, this is a non-government resume. I don't care what format it's in as long as I can read it, as long as the information is very logical. And I have a hard time reading resumes when I'm just trying to figure out what is on the resume and how it's organized and how it's written. You know, very, very make sure that the resume is logical. You can spend hours and hours looking for like the perfect resume format. But whatever job you're applying for, if it's asking for something, even like the date format, make sure that you make that date format exactly how they ask, and really craft each resume for each job.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And making it easy for that hiring manager to just skip to the section they want. Some may want to just go straight to your skills section, especially IT related, and that's where you have all your software that you know how to do IT things with. I'm not an IT person, clearly, but you know, make the section headers easy to understand and easy to locate. Help them to stand out from the rest of your text. You know, make sure that you the treatment that you give one section is uniform with the treatment of another section. It contributes to the overall readability. If you think about, you know, somebody in Dr. Mercer's position, for instance, and they're reading through 30 resumes to try to find 5 people that he wants to actually get on the phone and interview, and he has to spend time looking at this one resume and go, where's the stuff that I care about? How much time are you really going to get for him to actually spend that time trying to dig that out when he could just put it aside and look at 29 more resumes and find those 5 people he wants to talk to? Okay. Make your resume easy to read, easy to visually scan. Okay. That is most often done with simplicity rather than big showy items, you know?
Yeah, no, perfect. You know, and I'd also say, and I think Jim said this, you know, I recommend if you are a young to mid professional, just don't have social media. I mean, that's just my opinion, but just don't have social media unless you're a writer, such as Dr. Fowler, and you need to highlight your creative works, that social media is specifically about your creative works. Or you have a website that's specifically about your website or about you. But just a social media where you're commenting about the local politics or the national politics, or, I mean, as a professional, I'd highly recommend not doing that. Just because it can be viewed as a risk. And then if you just need one checklist to get you knocked off of the filtering, that could be it. If you have a very active political social media, be political, but just know that that could get you knocked off.
For sure. Dr. Mercer, do you mind if I ask of the faculty? We did collect some questions here on the career coaching team too, some questions that we hear often. And though we have our recommendations and our advice, of course, like I said before, you guys are the industry experts. So I'd like to just ask some general questions. They aren't necessarily industry specific. And first person to come off mute, you can definitely answer and then, kind of go around that way. Would that be okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Okay, so one of the very popular questions we get is, how do I become a professor in your field? Does anybody want to talk about professorship?
Jackie.
All right,
Yeah.
go for it, Jackie.
Yeah, I was planning on being a lawyer and went for my master's degree, and a professor asked me to take over a class, and I walked into the class that day and I started teaching, the first time I ever taught, and I was so blown away by it. So it was so empowering and so wonderful. And so I changed my major in my master's degree, and I finished that. I was working at the same time, so I was getting experience in my field, and then I applied for my doctorate. Now, for me, I worked and went to school both times, which worked for me because it gave me the skill set that I needed as well. So what I would say is, if you want to be a professor, you got to like going to school. And I will say that the further you go up, the more pinpointed you can be in what you take for your subject matter. So if you love, like for instance, I loved English, I loved linguistics. So by the time I was in my doctorate, I was almost exclusively taking that. And so go to school, be a good student. That's how you become a professor, and have a love of the discipline, and a love. Again, I sound like a broken record. It's all about communication, teaching.
Yep.
You have to be able to articulate your knowledge. So don't be afraid to take some education courses in order to help you be good in the field. So there's a lot of professors, and I'm sure you know, a lot of professors in the country, in the world, that, boy, they know their subject matter, but they cannot figure out a way to help you know what they know. And so take a few education courses on the way.
Okay.
And if I could highly recommend, and this is of course a notoriously selfish plug here, take courses in writing in English, and take communication courses so you know how to communicate. Now, we can all communicate, but really try to, if you're not an extrovert, you can still be a lowercase extrovert, where you become extroverted in the context of X, Y, and Z. And that's okay. You don't have to like entertain the entire room. Or hopefully it's okay, Britt. When I'm around Britt, she just fills up the room. She's so amazing. For me, I'm a lowercase extrovert in situations like this, and that's okay. But also, know how to hard sell yourself, because that's so important, because nobody else is going to do it typically. It's up to you.
And can I add something to what Bjorn said? When people walk into my classes, it's kind of depressing. The first thing they say to me is not hello. They say, I hate writing. And I always say to them, you're walking into a class where you already know the subject matter. And so all I have to do now is help you learn the skill set. So don't be afraid to take writing courses. If you don't find the right professor, then find another professor. You'll find someone that help you learn the skill of writing, but go in with confidence, knowing A, you speak the language, and B, you know how to write. You know how to write. And so you've already cracked the hardest two things in the course.
All right,
and I'll just throw one more thing out there. I think that within the sport management discipline particularly, there's a great opportunity if you've worked in the industry for a number of years to potentially serve as an adjunct with just a master's degree. So it's a good opportunity to try on education as a career field before you commit to your PhD studies, which might be 3 to 6 more years of education. So I would suggest that, and definitely if you are interested in adjuncting, highly support what Bjorn and Jackie were saying. Education courses are key. Transitioning from a career field directly into the classroom is a challenge, So there are many people there to support you if you are interested in such a role, but be sure that you do your due diligence and make sure that you are putting in the work as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, faculty. I appreciate that. I know we've got a couple more minutes left, but a very popular question that comes up with us as well. Okay, so I want to hear your perspective on it. Is about concentrations. We get asked very often, what concentration do I choose to do X job? And so I want to hear outside of the academic arena. So hiring manager wise, work wise, how important is a concentration? How influential is it on, does this student, or does this applicant get the job and this other one who also had human resources but didn't have a concentration? Do any of you have any employment related perspectives on that? Dr. Burch.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. That is huge in our industry. Like I mentioned, Intel is a very multidisciplinary field. But as we look at situations and things both domestically and overseas, it's amazing to me what the events in the Ukraine and Gaza have shown the need for very competent and people with data analytic and data science skills in the Intel community. Okay. So traditionally, that was not a thing, but in the world of big data, it's everything. And being able to manipulate and look at data from disparate sources is huge in our industry. So play to your strength. As I mentioned, I got my foot in the door because of a language skill. I grew up in Central America. I lived there until I was 18. They were looking for Spanish linguists back in the day, and that's what got me in. So as you plan out your concentration, think about in terms of not only what your passion is, but marketing. Talk to somebody, network, talk to a coach, and if your passion aligns with a concentration and it is marketable, you may have your answer right there.
Thank you. Any others?
Right, and I'll add that for instance, my doctorate is in IT, but then I also wanted to have a better impact when it comes to interacting with students. So I also have a master's in counseling. So I say that only because if you're interested, let's say, in working in IT in a management position, then perhaps a concentration in cybersecurity, perhaps a concentration where it'll give you, and you're going to be working, let's say, potentially you might end up being a manager, supervising those with cybersecurity skill set as a specialist. So it really kind of depends on those areas that you might want to blend or work together, hands in glove. If you find that you have, I like to say, more technical skills, then maybe you want to blend it with management, because oftentimes the technical piece of working maybe is networking, working perhaps as a coder and so forth. But in order to be an effective manager, it pays to have those managerial skills. So while you may have the technical skills, now the concentration that you have, you may pick up maybe some key core courses, but then perhaps there's a concentration that would give you skills in management or skills or certificates. Sometimes you have to look beyond concentration and pick up certificates that'll complement your degree. Lots of time we start out, many individuals get their bachelor's degree, start out in the technical field, but they eventually want to get promoted to management. And so they go after maybe a certificate with more managerial related type opportunities. Once you step into your position and start to work, you'll see where you want to get promoted to or other types of activities. One of the awesome attributes about Google and its HR system is it allows And you may find this at other companies too, that you can rotate, you can go from one position to the next. And so even after being in your position, you might find, hey, you know what, I would like to step into this role. And at that point, go after a certificate of some sort where it's an additional six semester hours. And it then will carve out an opportunity now for you to work in that capacity. You understand this as when you budget, always set aside money for continuing education. I was just at a conference and they said, hey, it's not just the certificate, it's not just the degree, it's continuing to educate and to improve yourself. So always set aside some of your budget for how am I going to continue to improve myself to go after my PMI, Project Management Institute certification, so that I'm well ahead. And I'll tell you, well, many of the faculty we work with, they're oftentimes going after additional certifications to, one, keep themselves fresh, keep themselves active. You and I know technology, and most technology is infused in just about everything, and it's changing so frequently. So that have an attitude of continuing education, because it doesn't stop here. And as you see those opportunities, you may go after a certificate of some sort, a certification, which is very different from a certificate, and even other development that will still give you the skill set you need to step into maybe another job or a working capacity within the company that you're currently at. So pay attention to that. Keep a little bit reserved for continuing education. That's the attitude, because what you get today will be stale in many instances later on, and you want to continue to be fresh and build your resume.
I just have one quick example to give. My son is a screenwriter. He double majored. Now he double majored in law, and he got his job because they were looking for someone who could handle documentary information. So he had the right skills for screenwriting, but more importantly, he had the other side that they were looking for. So it's rare, they said, for it to come together in one person. So it's complementary when you do a concentration or a double major, or however you want to set it up. It's a really complementary skill set.
Okay, awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to put a link I'm answering Rhonda Miller's question here. She's asking, can a person volunteer as an adjunct for APUS? I don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to put a link to our careers page. But if any of you guys know, could you let Rhonda know, please?
No.
No, but after you graduated from APUS 2 years, well, it used to be where after 2 years, you can come on back as adjunct, you can apply.
Okay, and then there is the link there to that, and that is faculty and staff for anybody watching and listening and interested in maybe working for APUS. I'm sorry, Dr. Burch, that was you trying to come in?
No,
okay.
just a quick story. We had American Public University has conferred 4 doctors in strategic intelligence since we started the program in 2018. And there were two that applied for a part-time faculty position with APUS, and I cleared it with HR, and they said, yeah, it's not a problem, and they're now part of our faculty. So I just throw that out there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's fantastic. So there's hope, so review those careers pages, and also talk to your faculty in your classes and ask if they have any recommendations for you guys. Dr. Mercer, I'm going to go ahead and take a step back and let you resume the emceeing and, close us out today.
No, thank you. And thank you everybody for being here. We're hoping that this collaboration with Career Services could be something that is maybe quarterly, where students can come and get great information. We'll have different panels of experts with different fields, where we can go into maybe more micro discussions about certain things. But thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Fowler, Dr. Jacobs, Dr. Watson, Dr. Parker, Dr. Burch. Thank you all for being here, having a great conversation. Again, number one, we're here to help. We're here to help facilitate your success. And honestly, Job seeking is difficult. And so all we can do is say, keep on trying, and we're here to help. So thank you all for being with us.